to get x cubed? Well, in order to get 1x cubed, I've got to multiply by 2x. Oops. Because 2x times 1/2 x squared gives you x cubed. The 1/2 times the 2 cancels out and gives you a 1. So now I'm going to multiply 2x times this. And so that gives me 2x times 1/2 x squared is x cubed. 2x times 25x gives me 50x squared. And 2x times 9 gives me 19x. So now I'm going to subtract or add the opposite, so that means I'm going to change the sign, so that plus becomes a minus and that plus becomes a minus. And so combine your like terms, that's a 0 right there. 250 minus 50 is 200. And 100 minus 19 is going to be positive 81x. Bring down the 0. And so 1/2 x squared, 1/2 x squared times something has to give me 200x squared. Well, when you divide 200 by a half, not by 2 but by a half, you get 400. So what I'm going to put here is 400, because 400 times 1/2 is 200. And so I'm going to multiply that and I get 200x squared. 400 times 25, that's going to give me, let's see, 10,000. And then 400 times 9 gives me 3,600. Okay, so now I'm going to subtract or add the opposite. So this is a minus, this is a minus, and this is a minus. Okay, so now combine like terms or add. Okay, so you get that. And then you get negative 10,000 plus 81 gives you negative 9,919. Oh, did I add right? Oops, I caught a mistake. Right here should be 18. 9 times 2 is 18, and I put 19. And so that's going to give me 82 right here. Okay? And then, so that's going to give me 9,000 when I subtract 9,918 x minus 3,600. So your answer here would be, your quotient is 2x plus 400 plus negative 9,918x minus 3,600 over 1/2 x squared plus 25x plus 9. So this is the answer. Alright, so this is number 3 on your turn on the earlier page, right? So I'm setting it up. 3x squared plus 6x plus 1 is going to be it's a divisor. And so I ask myself, what do I have to multiply this by in order to get this? Okay, and that would be 5x. So now we multiply 5x by each of these 3 terms right here. And so that gives me 15x cubed plus 30x squared plus 5x. Okay, so now I'm going to subtract, or same thing, add the opposite. So here and here. So this is 0, and I get negative 30x squared. 8x minus 5x gives you 3x, and bring down the negative 12. So then, what do you have to multiply 3x squared by in order to get negative 30x squared? And so the answer to that is negative 10. So negative 30x squared minus 60x minus 10. Okay, so now I'm going to add the opposite because I'm subtracting, so this is plus, plus, and plus. Combine or add the lines together. This is 0. 60 plus 3 is 63x. And negative 12 plus 10 is negative 2. And this becomes your remainder. Okay. So the way they want you to write the answer is they want you to write the divisor times the quotient. So 3x squared plus 6x plus 1, the divisor, times the quotient plus the remainder. Okay? And which is the same thing, this is the same thing as I've been writing the answers before, where I say, and I'll move it over here to the side a little bit, where I'll say, I'll write it as 5x minus 10, that's your quotient, plus 63x minus 2 over, is it 3x? Let me see. Yeah, 3x squared plus 6x plus 1. So the answer could be written like that, and the way that they want you to write the answer in the book is like this. But they're both saying the same thing. Alright, so number 4, again I had to put a placeholder, 0x, because the polynomial did not have an x term. So now you ask yourself, what do you have to multiply this by in order to get 9x to the 4th? So that would be 9x squared. So now we multiply, so that gives us 9x to the 4th. And 16 times 9 is 144. Okay, so now we're going to subtract, so we're adding the opposite. So minus, and this becomes minus. Okay, so then you add the two lines, and you get 0, and then you bring down the x cubed because there's nothing to add or subtract from it, so you just bring it down. And then 11 minus 144, that's going to give me negative 133 x squared, and then you bring down the 0x. Okay? And so now what do you have to multiply by x squared in order to get x cubed? That would be x. So we multiply, x times x squared is x cubed, plus 16x, I'm going to put the plus 16x over here. Now we subtract or add the opposite, so this is minus, and this is minus also. Combine the two lines, so this is 0. There's nothing to add or subtract from negative 133, so you just bring it down. And 0 minus 16 is negative 16x, and bring down the 4. So what do you have to multiply by x squared in order to get negative 133x squared? That would be negative 133. Okay, so that gives you negative 133x squared plus, let's see, a positive times a negative is negative, so it's negative 133 times 16. You can take a calculator, plug that in to get the number, and it gives you negative 2,128. So now we're going to subtract or add the opposite. So here that's a plus and that's a plus. And so when you combine the two lines, this is 0, this is negative 16x. 2,128 minus 4 gives you 2,124. And this is your remainder. Okay? So now the way I write the answer is just simply 9x squared plus x minus 133 plus the remainder divided by the divisor, which was what, x squared plus 16. Oops. So that would be the answer. The way they want you to write it in the book, and I think the reason why they want you to write it that way is because that way it's set up to check where you put the divisor times the quotient plus the remainder. So this is how they want you to write it in the book. It's important that you know both ways of writing the answer, the first one and the second one. Alright, so for number 4, I forgot the page number, but it's number 4 on the second to the last page. And so you ask, and notice I added a placeholder right here, 0, because there was no constant in the dividend. So then you ask yourself, what do you have to multiply x squared by in order to get 9x to the 4th? So that would be 9x squared. Okay, so you multiply, gives you 9x to the 4th. 2x times 9x squared gives you 18, positive 18 x cubed. So now we subtract or add the opposite, so that becomes a negative. And so when you combine these, you get 27 minus 18, that's 9. Whoops. We bring down the next term, which is 23x squared. And so you ask yourself, what do you have to multiply x squared by in order to get 9x cubed? And the answer is 9x. So this is 9x cubed. 9 times 2 is 18. So we're subtracting or adding the opposite. And so now you combine this. 23 minus 18, that's going to give you 5. Okay, you bring down the next term, which is 10. And so now, what do you have to multiply x squared by in order to get 5x squared? Well, the answer to that is 5. So 5 times x squared is 5x squared, and 5 times 2x is 10x. We're subtracting now, so we're adding the opposite, so this is minus and this is minus. And so when you combine those two, you get 0. The remainder is 0. Okay, so then what that means is that these are both factors. This one and this one are both factors of this polynomial right here. Okay, so the answer, the quotient, is 9x squared plus 9x plus 5. This is the answer. Alright, so for number 8, again, no need for placeholders on this one. And you ask yourself, x times what gives you 3x cubed? And the answer to that would be 3x squared. You multiply, you get 3x cubed plus 6x squared. We subtract, so that means that we add the opposite. And so the 3x cubes are gone, and you get 12 minus 6 is 6, 6x squared. Bring down the 11x. And then you ask yourself, x squared times what gives you 6x squared? That would be 6x. We multiply, so that gives us 6x squared plus 12x. So now we subtract by adding the opposite. And so that gives 0 here. 11 minus 12x is negative x. Bring down the minus 2. And then you ask yourself, x times what gives you negative x? Well, that would be negative 1. And so you multiply negative 1 times x plus 2, so that gives you negative x minus 2. We subtract by adding the opposite, and that gives me 0, remainder 0. So the answer is 3x squared. So here's another problem where we got remainder 0, and what that tells us is that both this and this are factors of this polynomial.